Hi, beautiful community. The Marco Rubio speech at the Munich Security Conference is really taking the piss out of you, whether you are an American citizen or whether you are a European. And it's predictable but disconcerting that it was relatively well received in the auditorium, which shows an incapacity in European corridors of power to truthfully narrate what is happening, not just with the government of the United States, but also with the threat of Trumpist candidates winning office in European domestic politics too. So let's take a look at what Rubio said. We increasingly outsourced, and I didn't just read it, I watched it. So we can have a sense of it. We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty to international institutions, while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves. So Rubio is attacking the post-World War II revolution in international norms and international jurisprudence. To appease a climate cult, we have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people. And in pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our borders to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens our societies and who we are. Another section I want to share. This is the path that President Trump and the United States has embarked upon. It is the path we ask you here in Europe to join us on. It is a path we've walked together before and hope to walk together again. For 5 centuries before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding, its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, and build vast empires extending out across the globe. But in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions and by anti-colonial uprising that would transform the world and drape the red hammer and sickle across vast swathes of the map in the years to come. And then there are repeated references to Europe's civilizational bond with the United States. And then there is a line when he went on to meet Orban, when he said, I can say to you with confidence that President Trump is deeply committed to your success because your success is our success. This is an administration that's on and off been campaigning for the AfD, for Orban, for Nigel Farage. So why is this so disrespectful to you? Why is this so full of crap? Well, first of all, what Rubio says is important insofar as it's Rubio and it's said at an important event. It's not important in the sense that it doesn't add anything new to what we should understand the Trump administration to be doing. So it's effectively irrelevant. It's Rubio positioning himself for 2028 as somebody who is not going to betray Trump's legacy, but as somebody who is also not J.D. Vance. It's also Marco Rubio engaging in very cheap entrepreneurial politics, because the stuff he is saying there is not stuff he would have said before he joined the Trump administration. When you sell out a sense of ethical adequacy in politics in exchange for power, you eventually begin to tell yourself that you're making a difference because without you, this bad administration would have been worse. It's almost never true. And a good example of this is the fact that in this 30-minute, 29-minute speech, Rubio, for all of his self-addressed talk about how things would be even worse for Ukraine without him in the administration, he hasn't mentioned Ukraine once. This is a speech about global affairs, security in the West. He hasn't mentioned the Ukraine war once until the Q&A session in this 29-minute speech. So what happens is that your entrepreneurial self-indulgence being, and we don't want to say this too loudly because this is introduced in the language of Trump in the political discourse, but being little Marco, small Marco, which is what he is being, isn't something you can then overcome. Because if small Marco made you be the Marco that jumps into the administration, you're not then going to become a bigger Marco inside the administration. The bigger Marco wouldn't have jumped into the administration in the first place. Now, you might have an ethical objection to this valorization of Western imperialist expansionism of the past, the pre-World War II state of Western imperialism, because it was quite destructive for human lives. It's a complicated story, we must tell about it. But the point is that that's not even the point. The point is, whether you thought it was bad or not, you can't bring it back. You don't have the historical conditions to bring it back. So it's essentially just magical thinking, words thrown into the wind without substance. And it's even more embarrassing than that. Little Marco's administration is destroying the state capacity the United States needs to administer any imperial enterprise across the globe. They are destroying their capacity to be a global imperial actor, malign or benign. And not in a way that the future administration, the future Democrat administration could reverse. Right? This is not level of destruction of state capacity that's comparable to things that the Bush administration may have done, for instance, in the terrible way they weren't prepared for 9/11. This is much worse, right? So this is a destruction of the capacity of the United States to do anything that it wants to do. The practical consequence of that is that you're going to lock the United States into being a power more concerned about regional spheres of influence. And that does align very strongly with the ideological current of international concern that you do find in the Trump administration. This talk of civilizational bond is irrelevant. This repeated talk of civilizational bond is irrelevant. It's a way for Marco to give J.D. Vance's speech, but just with a kind of positive flourish that will get European officials in denial to then applaud him. But it's substantively not a different speech. Moreover, international affairs, this is more magical thinking, don't even function on the basis of civilizational bonds. They function on the basis of certain systems of cooperation that sustain across historical periods. So, yes, Europe shares a civilizational bond with Europe, certainly, forget the United States for a moment, but it doesn't mean you get security from that. How many times have France and Germany been at war in the last 500 years? I don't know, but I mean, it probably will not be sufficient to count it on the fingers of two hands. How many times have France and Germany been at war since 1800? You could count that on the fingers of one hand, just about. Right? So this talk of security isn't anything like a proposal of a mission or proposal of a vision for the international space. It's, in fact, just pandering to domestic culture war discourse. So, whether you like what you're hearing there or not, it's not backed up by anything. It's bullshit. And it takes the piss out of you. It takes the piss out of you because the fanciful return to US imperialism is not part of what's realistic in the contemporary world. And it's because their administration are destroying the capacity of the US to even be an empire light. It's taking the piss out of you because it doesn't even say a word about Ukraine in 30 minutes of ventilation. It's taking the piss out of you because little Marco is in this only because he is little Marco and he's thinking about 2028. And here, I mean, we don't know where we are, but it's probable that you could bracket him in that second group, maybe together with AOC, for possibilities in 2028, and you're going to have Newsom and Vance in the group A at the moment. This could change very much in the months to come. These are people who are quasi-campaigning for destructive, authoritarian, ex-conservative, post-truth populists in Europe, while extending fake gestures about shared civilizational bonds. And they're also people who are attacking domestically US institutions, not on the basis of them being not official and not performing the job well, but on the basis of how aligned they are historically with either having individuals in them who've said mean things about Trump, or how much they're perceived to be aligned with liberal politics in the US sense of liberal politics. So this is an ideological authoritarian wave of institutional destruction. So there is no sense they're extending any kind of a hand you can reach for if you're Europe. And there is no sense they're returning you to any kind of past glory if you are a US citizen. And it's an unbelievable testament to the evasion of reality by European officials that Rubio's speech was well received just because he sprinkled it with a few words about Leonardo da Vinci and the Beatles. So you need to have a capacity to be alert about when public officials are really taking the piss out of you. Right, like handing you a bag and saying one thing is in it and it's not that bad, but in fact it's a bag that's full of crap. It's important to be alert about that. Lots of love. Talk soon.